cocktail hour, so rack 'em up. Ooh, mama, it's cocktail hour, so pour it up. Pour it up.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Zeta Lisa. Welcome to Mama's Cocktail Hour. Today is book club, and it is our book club called After Hours, so welcome. Today we're going to be reading chapters 7 through 9 from the book Bling. Just to give you guys some insight so far, the main character is Lamont. Lamont is said to be Diddy, or allegedly, right? Or Russell Simmons. I've heard some good ones in the comments. But he is a media mogul who is rising heavily in the ranks for hip hop, and he signs artists. And so this book was written by Erica Kennedy, who is no longer with us, and it has been highly alleged in the media that something terrible happened to her after she wrote this book. So this book is very exclusive, and it is hard to find. It took me almost 6 months to find this book. And so we are reading it here on Mama's Cocktail Hour. So just a disclaimer, I am gonna stumble. I am human. So for all the haters in the comments that are like, girl, get your reading up, use AI, just remember, I am reading this book for free at leisure for you and for me. So cut your girl some slack, give me a like, throw a comment, get your cannabis and coffee, get your drink of pleasure, whatever your poison is, put me in your ears and do your thing as I nicely read with all of my heart and all of my capability this book and these chapters. All right, so that's my disclaimer for all the haters. But other than that, for everybody giving me love and support and all my new subscribers, this book is for you guys, really, for the people showing love. Let's get into it without further ado. Okay, so we are on chapter 7, and it's titled Rebel Without a Pause. After completing a marathon round of phone interviews in the conference room, Rad stopped in to see his pal Daryl. As he pushed a pile of rap and car magazines to the floor so he could sit in the loan office chair that was wedged between Daryl's desk and the wall, Daryl said, "Yo, did you see your review in double XL? It's here." Dickie's impressively picked out afro flapped back as he dove into the magazine pile. Daryl's phone rang and he answered it. "What's poppin'?" Wrong move. It was Imani, Lamont's kiss-ass assistant. Her name meant faithful in Swahili, but the only person she was unfailingly faithful to was Lamont. "Didn't I tell you not to answer the phone like that?" she scolded. "What you want? If Lamont hears you answering the phone that way, it's gonna be your ass." It was a point of pride for Daryl that he couldn't often get under his skin enough to inclicit some expletives. He wished she said effing ass. Funny how she never said a curse word without earshot of Lamont. "When you answer the phone, said Daryl McHenry, she instructed. "That's all. Not who's that. Not what's good. You sound like a damn fool." There was nothing Daryl would have loved more than to give Miss Manners a swift kick in the ass. It was bad enough he had to entertain Dickie in the windowless hole that used to be an effing storage closet. He didn't want to sound all corporate and shit. He and Richard Dickie Garnett had grown up together in South Carolina. Dickie, now 25, who 2 years older than Daryl, but he'd been left back twice, so they wound up in the same grade in school. No academic role model, that Dickie, but he was hands down the coolest and funniest cat south of the Mason-Dixon line. He's been the star of their high school, always drawing a crowd by spitting clever verses, which Daryl fed beforehand to snap on the other guys or to compliment the pretty girls. Now he was a star for real, with platinum sales, endorsement sales, more hot chicks than he could juggle a plush condo in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and the brand new limited edition Sean John model of the Lincoln Navigator, which included a Jacob the Jeweler clock in the dashboard. Daryl watched Dickie intently, reading his album review. No more than a paragraph or two, but it still might take Dickie a while to get through. His reading comprehension wasn't the best, but he was undeniably good-looking, well-built, with a silky goatee, hooded bedroom eyes, and charisma to spare. So Dickie didn't need to spend much time worrying about his borderline illiteracy. If Daryl were to disturb him right now, Dickie be the first to snap on himself. Damn, ninja, chill. You know I can't read. After being summoned to New York by Dickie 3 years ago, Daryl had fallen in line and stayed humble. He hustled behind Dickie on the road, secured women for the crew, and taken the fall when a bag of cannabis was discovered on their tour bus, but by border cops as they crossed over to Canada. Winning over Lamont was harder. For his first 6 months on the scene, Daryl had to address him as Mr. Jackson, while Dickie called him Monty or my ninja. But he made it to the next level, and catering to Fat Man's every whim, including cleaning his sneakers with a toothbrush for $5 a pair, had paid off. Daryl had finally got his shot at producing, and he'd receive official writing credits on Straight Clownin', after having ghost-written some of Dickie's first album and even more of his second. Daryl's goal was to be bigger than P. Diddy, but like the legions of industry up-and-comers who were envious of the unstoppable Diddy mojo, all he did was badmouth the hardest-working brothers in the business. Wow, guys, so this is our first inkling that they have this character and they're making mention of Diddy. That's a sidebar. All right. Daryl eyed the enormous diamond jester crowd hanging from platinum chain around Dickie's neck. That's what he needed. Some effing ice. A necklace, a watch, a pair of 3-carat stud earrings, maybe. Or damn, not even a pair. Just one diamond of any sort. But he had to send money down to his parents every month to take care of his 4 younger siblings, so there wasn't much left for non-essentials. He was embarrassed to be ice deprived around Dickie, but he played it off like he didn't care. Last year, after Dickie got his Reebok dough, he offered to buy Daryl a sick watch that cost 2 times Daryl's salary at the A&R job. Nah, homie. You know, I like to keep it low-key, Daryl said, turning it down even though he wanted it. And how? He told himself he'd get that and more on his own one day very soon. I said, what you want? Daryl repeated into the phone slowly and sharply. I need to speak with you, Imani said. We speaking right now. No, I need you to look at something. Please come into my office. Imani had a desk all the way on the other side of the floor, right outside Lamont's Stately's office. Their space executive suite was behind glass doors. Daryl wanted to tell her that just because she wore dreads and got invited to every industry party didn't make her cool. She only got into those parties because everyone knew getting in good with Imani meant they'd go to the top of Lamont's callback list. She didn't even have a man to bring as her +1. As far as Daryl was concerned, she was a 27-year-old college dropout who'd worked her way up from receptionist to executive assistant by puckering up to Lamont's fat ass. You know, Imani, you should have been a school principal, Daryl said to ruffle her feathers. You would have been good at that. And you missed your calling too, Daryl, she retorted crisply. You should have been one of Santa's elves. Stuck up bitch. I'm in a meeting. I'm leaving in 5, Daryl said, and picked up another line that she was flashing before she can utter another word. Talk to me, he said. It was Mecca, the cutie he'd met at Rad's album release parties and almost slept with a few nights after they shared a cheap Chinese dinner and a quick flick. She was only 18, but truly talented between the sheets, and she knew how to cornrow. She hooked him up in all fronts. I'm saying Diddy, y'all. He got Dickie's attention and put her on the speaker. "What's up, girl?" he said with an intimate whisper. "When you gonna let me get into some of that good stuff again?" "Am I on speakerphone?" "Ain't nobody here but me. I gotta run out to an important meeting," he said, winking at Dickie, hoping to impress her and his homeboy simultaneously. "I'm trying to get my stuff together." "So you still want me to braid your hair later?" Looking at Daryl's messy cornrows, Dickie bugged his eyes out and nodded his head in affirmation. "For sure," Daryl said, really hamming it up. "My shit is getting really raggedy. Swing by the office round 7 and we can get some grub first." "Definitely. If I come up there, maybe I can get the new Rad CD." Dickie smiled wide enough that one of his diamond and platinum tooth showed. Childishly bumped his crotch in the air while Daryl thought, "Groupie." The first thing she said to him when she learned he worked at Triple Large was, "Can you get me into a video?" Sure enough, girlfriend, but F me first. As no-name producer and no-title having assistant who was often strapped for cash, he had to work a lot harder than Dickie to pull chicks. Hell, Dickie didn't have to work at it at all. He had to beat these starstruck itches off of him and day and night. Daryl stayed in close proximity so he can help him with the overflow. "You know what? I want you to braid my hair," Daryl said, flashing Dickie a smile that said, "Peep the game, player." "Friday," Daryl declared firmly. "I'll call the travel agencies and make the reservations." Again, Imani turned to leave. "Get to stepping, itch," Daryl said, slightly commanded. And she said, halting to toss off one last directive, "Make sure you tidy up the apartment in preparation for her arrival, including the bathroom. Spotless, you hear me?" It killed Daryl for his boy to hear that. Dickie was a star, and Daryl was Lamont's slave. He was forced to take stand, but before he could come up with a snap, Imani had swanned it off. "Whatever," he shouted weakly, and then tried to get Mecca back on the line. Okay, guys, that is the end of chapter 7. We are moving on to chapter 8. And then we are going to move on to chapter 9, and that's where we will stop. So the next chapter is titled "Sky's the Limit." "For the last time, we are not moving to Atlanta," Toya said, sitting on the couch in the lounge of Wide Slide Studios. They just finished singing background on yet another demo. After all the free background work they'd done, Kenny was finally getting them paid. They'd never heard back from the Triple Large audition. Toya knew out of all of them, Mimi would be the most hurt, but she hadn't even mentioned it. Ever since they come back from New York a week ago, Atlanta was all Mimi talked about. Used to be that Mimi was the quiet one. The first time they performed at a talent show, she come down with such a severe case of stage fright that they almost had to pull out last minute. But Toya had seen her toughen up a lot over the years. Being in the group had a lot to do with it. Mimi was a beautiful voice, but it took hearing applause from other people for her to appreciate it. And then after they gained a rep, all those catty girls from school who had once hated her were out in the audience applauding. Mimi had always had a strong backbone. Though with the flaky mother of hers, she had no choice. It had just taken a while for her to show itself. Now look at her. She was all ready to pack up and move to Atlanta, a place where they didn't know a soul. Toya wasn't going anywhere. Her entire family was in Toledo, and she wasn't about to move to Atlanta to scrape and struggle, chasing some impossible dream. And after what Keisha had told her that afternoon, Keisha wasn't going anywhere either. Why are you so desperate to move to Atlanta all of a sudden, Toya asked. Toledo doesn't breed stars, Mimi said. Keisha was slumped down at the edge of the couch and Toya shot a look at her. Yeah, but Keisha can breed here. Mimi looked quizzically at Toya, and she turned and caught Keisha making a face at Toya behind her back. What does that mean? Keisha smiled nervously. Well, I got some good news. No, Mimi thought. Please do not say what I know you're about to say. I'm not getting fat, Keisha said. I'm pregnant. Mimi looked at Toya as if she needed confirmation. Toya kept her eyes directed forward at the television and mumbled, Don't look at me. Mimi turned back to Keisha. But you're not going to have it. Mimi, Toya admonished in Keisha's defense. Hell yes, Keisha said, terribly hurt. She rubbed her belly. I'm keeping my baby. You better congratulate her, Toya said, and stop being so selfish. Selfish, Mimi wanted to say. I turned down a solo deal to stick with the group, and now Keisha wants to have a baby with a drug dealer who already had 2 other kids and ruin everything? Keisha, you have no job. Your boyfriend is a drug dealer, Mimi said. He's getting out of that, Keisha snapped back reflexively. Anyways, we're getting married. Toya hadn't heard that part of the news. You are? Yeah, we going to shop for a ring tomorrow. Mimi couldn't believe it. At that moment, she realized she'd been a complete fool. She was always thinking about everyone else. Toya, Keisha, her mother. It was time that she started thinking about herself. Well, great, Mimi said. I have some good news too. The girls look at her. I'm signing a solo deal with Triple Large. Stop lying, Keisha said. I am, Mimi said. Since when? Toya demanded, wondering if Keisha's news had sent Mimi off the deep end. Was she making this up? Since Lamont Jackson offered me one, Mimi said, thinking that Lamont may have been right. They probably would have dumped her if either of them had been offered a solo deal. Apparently, it was every woman for herself. That's where I went when I went in that day in New York. There was no guy. Daryl took me to Lamont's apartment, this huge penthouse, and he was dying to sign me a deal, a solo deal. And you're going to dump us just like that, Keisha said angrily. No, Mimi said. I turned them down. For you. But since you obviously don't care about doing this, you're going to go on and have your baby because I'm taking the offer. You can't, Keisha wailed. Toya was surprised by the edge in Mimi's voice. She was acting like Keisha had done this purposely to hurt her. But what was Keisha complaining about? Keisha, you pregnant, Toya reminded her. But I never said I was quitting the group, Keisha insisted. I can have my baby and 7 months from now, everything go back to normal. I can't wait 7 months, Mimi said, arms folded. Imani's Lamont assistant had called Mimi at her home the morning. Imani had been shocked when Mimi told her she wasn't coming back to New York. Daryl hasn't said anything. Mimi decided the first thing tomorrow she was going to call her back. God, what if they wanted to take back the offer? What if they had thought she was some type of temperamental diva? Look, Toya said before Keisha jumping up to fight. Pregnant or not, she would get into it with anyone, even Mimi. I'm quitting the group, okay? So it's all settled. Mimi, do your thing. Mimi's anger drained away in an instant. You mean that? Yes, I've been thinking about quitting for a while. The only reason I went through the audition is because I knew it meant so much to you two. Why didn't you say something, Mimi asked. Same reason why you didn't say anything about them offering you a deal. Because I knew you'd be upset. Toya took Mimi's hand. I went to performing arts because I like to dance. It was better than going to the horrible school in my district. And singing in our group was fun, but it was always more like a hobby for me. But for you, Mimi, it's your dream. Lamont obviously thinks you have what it takes for it to come true, and you do. I always knew that. So I say, go for it. Mimi hugged Toya and turned to Keisha, hoping for approval too. After years of getting into scrapes with Keisha, had learned one thing: to recognize when she couldn't win. After a long silence during which she rubbed her belly, she grudgingly said, "Go on, girl. Just don't forget about your old friends." Did I tell you about someone? Essence in a prime booth at Tartan, Lamont had been angrily waiting for Travis Peters for 20 minutes. Which someone, Travis asked, holding his notepad in the room of other people in interest. My Asian rapper, Lamont said. That's his name. What's his name? They had a brief who's on first type go around until Lamont grabbed the notepad, wrote someone and underlined it. He's real introspective, a great storyteller, and he's going to be my Chinese Eminem. Albums in store in April. Great, Travis said and walked away. Sometimes Lamont wondered why he publicly needed him. Ali C on his payroll. He was his own best publicist, but he couldn't spin stories every minute of the day. He was a Bed-Stuy ninja, made good. And Ali C was an undeniably jab from Long Island, as she would. Say it, but she could get real gangster when it came to securing pub for her clients. So in that respect, they were cut from the same cloth. Lamont watched Travis make his way over to Don Cabino, sitting with his posse, the firing squad. Gambino was guzzling champagne straight from the bottle. A custom-made pair of diamond-encrusted handcuffs dangled from the platinum chain around his neck. Son of a bitch, probably on steroids, Lamont thought nastily. Lamont worked out to stay in shape. Nothing was wrong with that. Gambino looked like he was training for an Ironman competition, and no matter the weather, he wore tank tops or jerseys that showed off his pecs, which Lamont thought was rather gay. Lamont had noticed that since Gambino had taken to his appearance in all his artists, his once hairy chest had become totally smooth. Whatever he did to achieve that, did he shave it, did he wax it, was completely gay. The latest word on the street was that Gambino had liposuction on his stomach and had weekly high colonics that stuck a tube up your butt to clean you out, because it gave his abs more definition. If true, Lamont figured this man was one step away from a sex change operation. But Lamont had to admit that Gambino had done very well with Super Fat E, the star rapper on his label, Hits Inc. That's why Lamont was willing to shell out big bucks to get Fat E for the good-looking soundtrack, and why he wanted Mimi to work with him. Now all he had to do was get Mimi back here so she could work. Imani had informed him that there was a slight glitch in the program, but he would handle that soon enough. Travis was scribbling a lot. Why did Gambino have to say that was pressworthy? Lamont called him by his real name, Donald. His surname was Jones. Gambino was a nickname he'd been given. These hip-hop new jacks, Lamont thought, gangsters in their own minds. They all think they're staring at a movie called Hoodfellas. With his fair skin, face full of freckles, and nappy red hair worn in intricate cornrows that looked like an alien crop circle, Don Gambino resembled a ghetto opie more than a member of Gambino's crime family. Guys, I don't know why this sounds like, just a quick sidebar, I don't know why this sounds like to me like 50 cents, allegedly, right? I'm thinking like we're talking about like, yeah, they're giving him cornrows and stuff, but if you just think about like the overall image of this guy, they are talking about like he's buff, like he comes on with his shirt off, that he's always seen like shirtless, he got abs, you know, he waxes his chest because it's smooth, and Lamont is like saying that this guy is gay, like, or looks like it. And to me, like, that very hood persona kind of gives like what Lamont allegedly Diddy, right, thought of 50 Cent when he first came in the game. And how, remember, 50 Cent started his own record label and he had all of his artists. So he's given, Gambino is given like thug 50 Cent, like when he came out. All right, just a sidebar. So let's continue. All flash and no substance. Lamont had decided long ago that that was the problem with all the dogs that were barking at his heels. Gambino didn't know anything about the streets. He was straight up middle class, a graduate of St. Almond's Prep in Queens. He wouldn't have survived the day in Marcy projects Lamont had. Lamont had done it right, attending City College and studying business administration while promoting parties on his side. Who does that sound like, guys? Sorry, quick ad lib. I went to college, was known for promoting parties. Okay, let's get back. Lamont had done it right, attending City College and studying business administration while promoting parties on the side. He'd interned at a now defunct hip-hop label during college. Then after graduation had worked as the label's promotions man for a year. But he started managing one of the groups, Ghetto Soldiers. He's seen all sides of the business and along the way learned how to talk the talk with all the white boys. He'd worked his way up and earned his success. Nothing had ever been handed to him. Now, after he blazed the trail as one of the early hip-hop entrepreneurs, Gambino and those of his wanted to run rodshut over it and acquire a fistful of bills overnight without a solid business plan or one decent suit hanging in their closets. And they were succeeding. What other industry made you feel old at 38 for most men? That was the age when their careers were hitting their strides. But Puff had made the Forbes magazine. Richest 40 under 40, with a net worth of close to 300 million by age 30. When Lamont had seen that, he'd taken the magazine into the bathroom in his office, locked the door, and let out a primal scream. Gambino, with the revenues of his clothing company, Threads, growing every year, had a personal net worth of over 75 million. He was 28. Lamont had totally missed out on the clothing thing. The garment industry was a totally different ballgame, and he hadn't had any interest in learning it. But now he saw that his single-minded focus may have been the mistake that left him choking on the glitter dust of these other Negroes. Even if he sold triple large one day for many millions, he probably wouldn't even make the Forbes list. Everything was about youth culture these days. The entertainment industry wasn't catering just to teenagers anymore. Last year, Lamont had got to a conference call targeting tweens with Vern DeLuca, the advertising guru. He and Lamont were considered forming a company called Triple Large Advertising to market to the urban consumer. Lamont had thought that the seminar was called Targeting Teens and wondered why Vern even wanted to go, because wasn't that what they both did all day? But within the first few minutes, he got a crash course on the new demographic. They're 10 going on 16. Not kids, not teens, they're tweens. The keynote speaker said, looking as looking like he wanted to bust out on some pom-poms. Tweens had become one of the nation's more significant consumer groups. Huge amounts of music, television, movie, games, electronics, fashions, and foods are being marketed in their direction, and they're buying it. Spending by U.S. tweens with nearly $41 billion by 2005. Lamont left thinking, great, now I have to give a shit about what a 10-year-old thinks. The young ballers like Gambino and Damon Dash, the head of Rockefeller Record Clothing Company, Vodka Film Empire, always made a show of paying Lamont's conspicuous respect, but somehow it felt like more like disrespect to Lamont. Meanwhile, they all bowed at the altar of Russell Simmons. They acted like he was the godfather of hip-hop, had invented the whole shit. Russell was a shrewd businessman, and he had retreated from the music scene years ago after selling his share of Def Jam Records for $100 million. Now he devoted more attention to his clothing line, Fat Farm, and every time Lamont ran into him, Russ was either going to or coming from yoga class. Talk about queer. Lamont thought Russell's semi-retirement was a perfect opportunity to step into the Godfather's shell's toes and lord over the industry. But the people whose opinions counted had been slow to come around. Lamont's eyes bore down on Gambino in his Allen Iverson jersey. It didn't matter if you were from Philadelphia or not. All the hip-hop kids rocked number 3 Sixers jerseys because Iverson got down like that. AI's cornrows and the $300,000 worth of ice glistering around his neck, on his wrist, and both loads perfectly complemented his fuck you attitude. Gambino was a hip-hop kid, as far as Lamont was concerned. He's a child, an amateur. Lamont reassured himself that despite the fact that the Don was a multi-million-dollar CEO of his own hip-hop conglomerate, Lamont tried to clear his mind. He knew he conducted those internal dialogues whenever he experienced a flash of self-doubt. The flashes had begun to come so frequently and unexpectedly that he felt like he was suffering from some form of early onset male menopause. He now noticed Darryl was also wearing an Iverson jersey that had been concealed under his jacket earlier. Lamont looked over the girl who Darryl was crowding in the corner and decided she had too much flab hanging over the waist of her jeans. She was a semi. He let Darryl have her. Enjoy yourself tonight, player, Lamont thought, because come tomorrow, it's ass-kicking time. Lamont unconsciously rubbed his gut under his brown cashmere sweater. He was beginning to hate those number 3 jerseys mocking him at every turn. He felt like Michael Jordan guarding Iverson. Once MVP, but now fearing a good crossover dribble would have everyone wondering why he couldn't just relinquish his throne gracefully and go play around the golf. Gambino caught Lamont's eye and raised his bottle of Cristal in salute. Lamont raised his bottle of spring water in return, but he didn't budge. There was an awkward moment until Gambino squeezed out of his booth, yanked the brim of his sideways turned Phillies cap, and headed into Lamont's direction. That's right, son, Lamont thought. Kiss my ring. Okay, guys, that is the end of chapter 8. We are now going to be doing the last chapter. Okay, guys, we are now up to chapter 9, which would be the last chapter that we're going to read today. So we're going to read fully through 9, and then the next video I do will be starting from chapter 10. So this chapter is called Takeover, and let's get into it. Okay. The sweaty middle-aged white man threw his breakfast full of items onto the conveyor belt. Looking at her name tag, he said, "That's your real name?" Mimi, she said cheerfully. beginning to scan his item. That's me. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't mind idle chatter from male customers. Soon, she'd be out of here. She had called Imani first thing in the morning and was told that both Imani and Daryl were out of the office, but that they would call her back tomorrow. When she'd gone to work, she imagined the conversation she'd have with Herbie, Save Mart manager, and first class DICK. She had 2 words for him: see ya, but she didn't decide it was better to speak to Imani or Daryl first before doing anything rash. It wasn't official yet. Sometimes I see people wearing name tags and think, that girl doesn't look like a Diane or a Gwen. Like they picked up any name, the man rambled on, though she wasn't paying him much attention. She couldn't stop daydreaming about being solo. Maybe she could record some of her own songs instead of her mediocre material that Kenny had made them record for their demo. You ever feel like doing that? Doing what, she asked. Pretending to be someone else. All the time, she said. Thinking about those days are over. She was going to be signed, a recording artist, a solo artist. Goodbye Toledo, goodbye Save Mark, and goodbye Jerry. The man leaned closer and whispered, you know, I like sisters. And goodbye to all the jackasses like you, she thought gleefully. Maybe I'll see you again sometime soon, the sweaty sister-loving irritant said as he handed her a 20. She broke into a wide smile and replied, not around here you won't. She got out of work early by faking an upset stomach and cruised the mall. Everything looked different. When she saw couples holding hands, she didn't feel the slightest twinge of jealousy. She was going to have songs on the radios and videos on MTV. And Jamal was going to be sorry for what he'd done to her. And New York was a big city. She'd meet somebody better than Jamal in no time. Someone who was going to treat her right and adore her. She went into a couple of stores, and instead of agonizing about making purchases like she usually did, she treated herself. 2 pairs of shoes at Nine West and three pairs of jeans at the Gap. She was worth it. And then, instead of taking the bus home, she called a cab. Usually she did not do that unless she was working late night, and even then, only if she could get a ride from someone at the store. She wondered what her mother would say. She hadn't told her mother about it because Angela had gotten hysterical about everything, good or bad. And if Jerry had caught in wind of it, he would have tied her up and taken her back to New York and tried to collect a finder's fee. She decided she'd wait and tell them once she knew for sure. That was her plan. But when the cab pulled up to her house, she realized something was definitely up. The limo, parked out front, tipped her off. She opened the front door and laid eyes on the oddest assembly of people she's ever seen. Imani was sitting at the kitchen table with Angela, who was holding a mug of coffee and an unsteady hand. Daryl was perched on the kitchen counter, tapping like mad on his 2-way. The guy they called Witchy, who had been at the audition, was reclining in the armchair, holding the TV remote control and talking on his cell. At one end of the sofa was Jerry, who was, for once, had the decency to be wearing jeans and a shirt with sleeves instead of his usual grubby boxers and a wife beater. Lamont was huddled all the way at the end, as if Jerry were covered in anthrax. She walked in, and all 6 people in the cramped space looked up at her. Nice place you got here, Lamont said in greeting. Mimi cringed, having a blinding flashback to Lamont's luxury digs. All the things she had stopped noticing about their ramshackle house came into the sharp focus. The clanging radiator, the grease spot on the kitchen wall, the threadbare carpet under Lamont's polished black shoes. Mimi, why didn't you tell us? Angela wailed. They want to sign you to a record deal? I was informed, Lamont said, that you're having some second thoughts. Lamont glanced closely at Daryl, who seemed to be trying to hide behind the kitchen wall. Daryl passed the buck and slapped Imani with a murderous glare.
That nosy itch had to call Mimi when he told her not to, and of course she had then gone and snitched to Lamont. But we told him you're gonna take it, Jerry chimed in. Who are you to tell them anything, Mimi snapped. She could already see her pupils turning into dollar signs. Ka-ching! Angela was silently sitting at the kitchen table, afraid to make a peep in front of these people. When they rung her doorbell this afternoon, she hadn't known what was going on, but she tried to be hospitable. Once they explained the purpose of their visit, they tried to contact Mimi at work, but she had already fell off and no one knew where she'd gone. Lamont sat down, apparently to wait for Mimi's return, though he hadn't asked if he could say. Then everyone else settled in because he had. Lamont didn't look like Angela imagined a rap person would. The only hip-hop person she really could identify was Puff Daddy. If the name P. Diddy had come up, she would have thought that that was someone else or somebody entirely different. And when she seen him on TV, he usually wore lots of gaudy jewelry and a shifty expression. Diddy's definitely shifty. That's why he wear them shades, guys. Lamont was wearing a fancy navy pinstripe suit with a crisp white shirt open at the neck and some beautiful jewelry. One diamond earring and a lovely pinky ring. He seemed very nice, and his executive assistant was such a pleasant girl. Jerry had come home a while ago and had been briefed. He confidently declared that this was a good deal. Lamont was offering and Mimi should take it. Angela had no opinion of her own, but if Jerry said it was good, it must be. He'd been a used car salesman for more than 10 years. He knew from deals. We brought the contracts, Lamont said to Mimi. Imani rushed over and put them on the coffee table. You can read it all in black and white right here. Lamont reassured her. We already shown them to your folks. Jerry is not my folks, Mimi said as she flipped through the papers. It was all in legal language and she couldn't decipher, and there must have been over 100 pages. Lamont was getting antsy, but he tried not to show it. He'd expected to have things rolling by now. He wanted her in the studio, singing on the Fat E record. He wanted the I's dotted and the T's crossed done. The mother, in Lamont's opinion, was her mango-dyed feathered hair and jaws that drooped like a basset hound was stunningly unattractive. When she opened the door and he had gotten a load of her, he struggled to hide his distaste. Pushing out cute little Mimi had obviously been her finest hour. The Haitian father must have been one attractive dude. And then this cat Jerry had shown up. He thought that he only had to deal with the mother. He and Witchy had to back it up and roll out there. She's going to be a big star, shriek, all over again. Lamont restlessly twisted his white gold pinky ring. He decided platinum was played. It was like he had any desire to fly to effing Toledo. He might have just sent Daryl, but after the mess that Daryl had already made of this, he couldn't trust him. Neither was Witchy, a sure bet, so he decided to hop on a plane this morning and get it done himself. He made Daryl and Witchy come along as punishment. They were cramped in coach, seated side by side, which pissed them both off, while he and Imani were in first class. Lamont hadn't yelled at them. In fact, he hadn't said a word to them directly all day. While he often barked, shout, make demands and threats, he wasn't an out of control screamer. That undercats one's authority. Like they said, thin line between love and hate. He preferred the silent treatment. He found that saying nothing spoke volumes. There was nothing worse than being ignored. He brought Imani along for the feminine touch. He didn't want to show up 3 guys barging in the door into a poor woman's house. And damn, she really was poor. Now that he had gotten a peek at things, the scene was looking pretty desperate. Mimi was going to turn down the deal to stay here? He probably could have not shown up with a C-note and a McDonald's Happy Meal and gotten her to sign. And by God, they better be able to catch the last flight home, or else they was going to have to stay at some out-of-control there was going to be some out of control screaming tonight if he got stuck at some airport motel in his third-rate town. In this third-rate town. Witchy and Daryl were both going to find a $400 John Lobb shoe stuck up their incompetent asses. Mimi sat down between Lamont and Jerry on the sofa. You know, I actually called the office this morning, she said, because I have changed my mind. Lamont shot death rays at Daryl, who stepped behind the kitchen wall so that he missed him. I thought you would, Lamont said easily, handing her the Mont Blanc pen. I suppose I don't have to read all of this today, she said, clearly eager to begin her new life. Just show me, where do I sign? Lamont gingerly held the pages as Mimi signed her name in all 35 places marked with sign here post-its. He gave her a hug when she was done. Imani told Mimi she'd call her first thing tomorrow morning to discuss plane reservations and arrange for any shipping services she may need. Lamont didn't like to shake hands with people, germs, but he gallantly went over and shook Angela's hands, then reluctantly shook Jerry's, bidding them a fond adieu before he stomped out. The others were close behind, practically tripping over each other to get out of the house. Though Daryl and Witchy were bracing themselves for the verbal tirade to come with Lamont, you never knew when the storm would hit. Jerry and Angela stood in the doorway, smiling from ear to ear. Lamont turned back and waved one last time before he ducked inside the limo. As soon as the door was closed, Lamont held out his hands to Imani, having her use her superpowers to anticipate her boss's every need. She already had an antibacterial wet napkin ready. She slipped off his pinky ring and thoroughly wiped him down. That is the end of chapter 9. Wow, guys, this was a great read. I definitely tried to slow it down for you guys because, you know, I'm a New Yorker and I will speed read. So I hope you enjoyed it. We will start chapter 10 on the next video. If you guys have not subscribed, please subscribe. That means a lot to me. I am a new channel. I am trying to grow. And, you know, if you want to read, like, if you want to listen, I would definitely say, you know, just put it in your earphones, let the video play. It actually helps with my watch time. It helps me grow. So I just want to thank y'all for you know, coming on the video. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed, and throw me a, you know, a comment in the comments. I've been like really interacting with you guys. I think as I'm reading the book now, I think that there is a lot of like subliminals in here. Like Lamont almost seems like Diddy, but then they make reference to Diddy. And they make small references to, like I said, other people who I feel like are in the industry, such as like 50 Cent. So they made reference to Russell Simmons. You know, so there's a lot of people like subliminally being mentioned and then straight out being referenced. So that's something that I took from these last couple of chapters that we read. The next part, this is apparently part 1. And then moving into part 2, which would be chapter 10, it's going to be called All the King's Woman. So we are doing good. I would say, you know, hopefully we're going to try to get more chapter reads in, but I think it's better if I go slower and we just kind of, you know, go through this journey together. So I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thank you guys for reading with me. Please subscribe to the channel, write me a comment. And then also remember that all these videos are going to be in a playlist called After Hours. It is our book club. Thank you for everybody. Love y'all. And I will see y'all in the next video.
Ooh, mama, it's cocktail hour, so rock 'em up. Ooh, mama, it's cocktail hour, so pour it up.